Mike Pompeo is the last survivor, if you will, in Donald Trump's cabinet from his original national security team. He's the Secretary of State. He was the CIA director. How did this obscure congressman from Wichita, Kansas, of all places, become the most influential person, aside from Trump himself, when it comes to American foreign policy at this disruptive and unsettling moment? And what do we really know about him? What I found as I started sort of digging into Mike Pompeo more was that this was kind of a casualty of the accountability reporting about senior figures in the U.S. government that we used to do back when we had more time to do those things and we didn't have a president who was such an all-consuming scandal himself. The piece starts out with then Congressman Mike Pompeo in Kansas. It's March 5th, 2016, and that's the date of the Kansas presidential caucuses. Donald Trump was rolling towards the Republican nomination, but he hadn't quite locked it up yet. Mike Pompeo had endorsed Marco Rubio, as did a lot of other Republican members of Congress. Pompeo gets up there and he gives this speech attacking Donald Trump.
You know, Donald Trump the other day said that, if he tells a soldier to commit a war crime, the soldier will just go do it. He said, they'll do as I tell them to do. We've spent 7.5 years with an authoritarian president who ignored our Constitution. We don't need 4 more years of that.
I realized, listening to the speech of Mike Pompeo back in 2016, that I've never really heard him go off on Trump in a video form. Mike Pompeo is very, very sensitive about even the appearance of being caught out disagreeing with Donald Trump. I think he is worried about the idea that Donald Trump is going to remember back to March 5th, 2016, and that day that he was backstage in a Wichita arena saying, "Who the heck is this congressman?" Flash forward a few months later, Mike Pompeo, along with all the other Republicans in the Kansas delegation, endorsed Trump after he locked up the nomination. The flip-flop from Marco Rubio to Donald Trump is not the only flip-flop in Mike Pompeo's life. He's had a number of really striking transitions. I think this notion of Pompeo being able to go into new environments and to understand them and to succeed in them is something that characterizes this life filled with really striking transformations. From the beginning, there were a couple of things that leapt out at me about Pompeo's biography as I thought I knew it. One of those was his financial disclosure form and the fact that he was the poorest member of Donald Trump's cabinet. He talks about having an open Bible on his desk at the State Department.
In my office, I keep a Bible open on my desk to remind me of God and His Word.
He presents as this heartland evangelical, sort of devout, humble, very anti-government, anti-environmental protection guy from Kansas. That's his public persona. The first thing you realize about Pompeo is that he's actually not even from Kansas. He grew up in Orange County, California in the 60s. He came from a family whose parents didn't even go to college, and he got into West Point, and he did amazingly well there. And he got into Harvard Law School, and then he goes to Washington, and he gets a job at Williams & Connolly, one of Washington's most blue-chip law firms. And he married his college sweetheart the same weekend that he graduated from West Point. And then something happened. He's never spoken openly or publicly about what kind of a crisis he went through in this period of time. What he said is that he had the opportunity to move to Kansas, and that's when he started their aerospace. He quit this law firm job after really only a little bit more than 2 years. He got divorced from his wife. He has moved to Wichita, and he has joined up with these West Point friends, and he's starting his whole life over again.
I want to speak to you this morning, Kansan to Kansan. As an old Army guy, I want to speak to those who have served our country in uniform, veteran to veteran. Before I lost my mind and ran for Congress, I ran a small, dirty, smelly, beautiful machine shop. I want to talk to you this morning, manufacturing guy to manufacturing guy, about jobs in America.
Wichita was known as the air capital of America. And so there was a whole kind of ecosystem of smaller companies that catered to those big aircraft manufacturing companies. And they could buy up a whole bunch of those companies, put them together into one bigger company, and that would make a lot of sense. And so they raised money in order to do that. Pompeo seemed to be very eager to minimize and to deflect questions about the role in the wealthy, the billionaire Koch Brothers in financing this company, Thayer Aerospace, and the level of support that they had given to it. And so when he came to Congress in 2011, he and his aides told the Washington Post that the Koch Brothers venture capital fund had only given 2% of the investment in Thayer Aerospace. And in fact, it wasn't 2%, but according to documents that were on file with the Kansas Secretary of State but had never been published, it was closer to 20%.
Secretary Pompeo, congratulations again. I have no doubt that you will make America proud as our nation's chief diplomat.
There was this enormous opportunity for someone like Mike Pompeo that Donald Trump presented. Of course, the problem was that he doesn't agree with Donald Trump on just about anything. Donald Trump trash talks everybody. And yet, you will not find Donald Trump publicly saying a bad word about Mike Pompeo. I think one of the key things that Pompeo has done, probably in a fairly calculated way, which is to make sure that Trump never felt threatened by him. And that seems to be one of the most salient reasons for Pompeo's remarkable rise. Every Secretary of State and every president have disagreements. Every administration has internal fights over policies. You know, let's be clear about what's unique to the Trump administration and what's not. It wouldn't be unique for a Mike Pompeo Secretary of State to disagree with a Donald Trump president in any era of our history. What's unique is the way in which the president has personalized foreign policy and made loyalty the supreme test of service in his administration. Mike Pompeo gets furious if his loyalty to Donald Trump is questioned or his accuracy is questioned, and yet he publicly is often forced to defend things that are indefensible that Trump says or does, or things that are untrue.
Senator, I'm telling you what he had a conversation with Vladimir Putin about, and I'm telling you what U.S. policy is today. I understand, Senator, I understand the game that you're playing.
No,
I get
it.
You
know, Mr. Secretary,
I get
with
it.
all due respect,
Yeah,
I don't appreciate you characterizing my questions. My questions is to get to the truth. We don't know what the truth is.
Pompeo is a survivor, but for how long? It's a personal story about somebody who wanted to be always defined as a success, who's had success, and yet was somehow, that wasn't enough. He had to cover up or to mislead or to obfuscate about periods in his life that he could have been transparent about. I really believe that facts matter, and I really believe that it does matter that an agglomeration of little untruths in somebody's public biography can end up being an abuse of the public trust.